Hi, and welcome to Seat Meets Table, the podcast that brings people together. I am your host, Sam O'Hara-Childs, and my guest today is Adam Maslen-Moores. Hi Adam, how are you doing today?
I am fantastic.
Good stuff.
It is one of those days where it's a good day and it's a bad day. It's a good day because I'm about to go into another decade of my life. It's a bad day because I'm saying goodbye to my 30s.
Right.
So that's the last time I'm going to have a 3 in front of my number, unless of course I live to 300.
Well, it's possible. So this is a big occasion then, or a big day.
Yes.
Valedictory.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. Well, very glad to have you here for this big occasion. Yeah. What I wanted to begin with is to ask you, which area of the forces did you serve in?
Okay, right. Good question to start with. Right, Royal Navy.
Right. And
I was stupid enough, or maybe greedy enough, or perhaps influenced somewhat to become a submariner. So I'm third generation Navy. Grandfather was World War II. That was HMS Repulse. So if you know your history, she went down, I think, the day after Pearl Harbor off Singapore. Right. So he then spent the rest of the war as a POW. So I got partly raised by somebody who was a part of the greatest generation and did something that I often wonder, could I have done? So that's in my blood. And then coming from closer to home, both my mother and father were Navy. So my mother was a nurse. She'll tell you she was quite happy when I came along because that meant she had to leave. In those days she did. And my father he joined his surface fleet, but he was voluntold to join the submarine service as they were decommissioning, I think it was Ark Royal. So the proper Ark Royal. Yeah. Proper aircraft carrier. That was decommissioned, and then he went off to submarine school.
Right.
And as I came along, well, some of my fondest memories were those where I would go down onto the boat. So days out, painting zoo, doubles, woodlands, any of those little days out that you're used to as a kid. Some of my most favourite or fond memories are those of me getting to go down the boat and play around with the big toys and see what the big boys and girls get to do.
Right.
So that sort of influenced me. I also knew that financially, it's a branch of the armed forces where there's a good paycheck.
Sure.
So.
And it's reliable, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Job for life if you want it. Could make your life shorter in the worst case scenario.
Always that risk.
There is a risk involved, but it was stable. Got to see the wild, good paycheck, and I wanted something spooky to do. So.
You mean challenging and a bit scary?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think
push yourself.
I think young men in particular need a challenge. I can't speak for women, but I think there's probably some truth to that as well in regards to women, but
adventure, that kind of thing.
But it's Star Wars, isn't it? It's Luke Skywalker. Sure. He looks at that sunset. He's not looking at that sunset. He's watching that sun go down on another day, and it's like, well, what have I done? What have I done? Where have I been? I wanted to not be that person looking at the sunset going, that's a day wasted.
Sure.
I wanted to go and do something, ironically, where you couldn't really see the sunset on quite a few occasions.
Just looking through a porthole.
Yeah, it was a call to adventure, something that had stability, a good paycheck, and I wanted something interesting to do as well. So I picked the warfare branch within the submarine service, so I'd be able to get the full spectrum of jobs, everything from dealing with the ropes, firearms, firefighting, operating and maintaining equipment. And just being part of what we call the Action Information Organisation on the submarine. So very involved job, very high pressure, but it's one of those jobs where it's not like any within the armed forces. It's 99% boredom and just the grind. But sometimes you get that 1% of terror and excitement that I did something today.
Sure,
that was cool. That was interesting. What's everybody else done today? I don't know. What I do know is that today I got to live in a Tom Clancy novel.
Yeah.
So perhaps that call to adventure was worth answering. You realise that one, you are part of something bigger than yourself, but two, in order to be something bigger than yourself, you have to be that that version of yourself that can handle difficult situations or standing outside your comfort zone
and endure the grind.
Yeah, and endure the grind. So
be able
that's
to
the thing.
it.
So it's one of those where you learn a very interesting skill set that can, you can apply to any field, any walk of life, where it's not about asking for a lighter load in life. It's about asking or developing bigger shoulders.
Yeah.
So I can deal with the grind, but I've got to keep myself ready for the day where those bigger shoulders are going to need to appear. That you're going to need to have them.
Yeah, keep it in reserve.
Yeah,
just have that extra.
Absolutely.
10% or whatever is needs be, or the extra tool or weapon mentally, to face whatever the issue is.
It's very, especially in the submarine sector, it's very psychological. It's difficult to compare one to the other as apples and oranges, but talking from my perspective, I always found the physical stuff and perhaps having the mental agility, I found that the easier side of things. What I always found harder was dealing with the grind, as we keep going back to. That is where you have to develop your mind almost into a fortress. Like, you've got to put out the world, because that doesn't matter right now. What matters is, what is my current task? I have to be laser focused on what I'm doing with regards to looking after myself or looking after any lads that I've got that I have responsibility for. That's what you have to focus on. So if I was to use an example, say you've heard the term a Dear John?
Yeah.
So let's say you are on a deployment, on a patrol. You get one of these Dear Johns. Nobody wants that. It's a kick to the stomach. But you get that while you've got some downtime to be able to ring home, phone home, or email. Not the best way to find out that the world you thought you had back home has just imploded, but you now need to get back to work. So you've got to learn how to unscrew the lid, get rid of that, and screw that lid back on, get your game face on, or your fangs out, whatever it is you need to do. Or again, just be compassionate towards your peers and your subordinates, that you're there for them. You haven't got time to mope around. It sounds a bit harsh, but that whole, you haven't got time, boo-hoo, woe is me. So I've got a lot of responsibility to do here.
Especially in the military.
Yeah. So it's I say take it out. What I'm kind of come back to now is it's compartmentalization 101, isn't it?
Yeah. That's
what that job teaches you, is how to deal with something that perhaps you didn't want to. Most of the time you definitely didn't want to. But I need to remove myself from the equation so I can become laser focused on my task. A lot of people refer to that as mindfulness, and that's exactly what it is.
In essence,
I'd never heard the term before, let alone know what it was. But when I first heard about mindfulness, I said, well, I've been practicing that for years.
Yeah.
Because I lived in this little steel tube that went around the world. And
well, it's effectively extreme awareness and management of thought, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
In essence, and that's required, definitely in the military.
Yeah, you do.
And many walks of life, really.
Yeah.
Well, something else I wanted to ask you about is, what do you think the importance and the merit of the military is in 2024?
I think we're in a pivot. We're coming. I served during a time when it's what we would call, and I hate the term because it almost sounds like it takes away from the losses we've had over the last few years, but it's what we know as low intensity conflicts. Now, I know that sounds ridiculous, especially if you look at Iraq and Afghanistan and the horrible things that have happened there and the tragedies that have come out of those conflicts. But they are, in terms of, we're fighting an adversary that's non-uniformed. It's asymmetric warfare. To summarise that, it's rock, paper, scissors. And we're used to being the ones with the rock, and we still do have the rock. We like to fight guys with scissors, but we were fighting guys with paper, and we all know what happens with rock, paper, scissors. But ultimately, that's the kind of war we're engaged in. So you could see that in the way that our armed forces were restructured during my time, and now we seem to be pivoting back towards almost, especially if you look at the Americans who are doing the same, it's almost that Reagan era of, right, it's big Navy, big Air Force, big Army, and we're going to have to go the same way. So we're not going to be investing so much in weapon systems that would be used for littorals or counter-terrorism or counter-insurgency. We are looking now at the high-intensity conflicts, high-end fight. So that is peer state warfare. And for us, those peer states are a resurgent Russia and a relatively aggressive China. And we have to be able to not necessarily go out and look for a fight, pick one. I don't think anybody wants that. But we need to be able to support our allies in challenging those potential peer state adversaries. So going forward, the role of the armed forces is going to have to be one of deterrence on perhaps a global scale, but one based more on reasserting and maintaining stability. Now, I know some people think that's us sticking our noses in, and we'll follow the Americans as they do that, but I would rather have the Americans as they are. They kind of have. They take the lead for obvious reasons, and we'll follow. That's just the relationship we have, but that's because our values are aligned.
Sure.
So we're going to have to step up as a country, and we're going to have to be used to the fact that we're going to be having to contend with a lot more saber rattling. I don't think our potential peer state adversaries have any intention of wanting to get into an actual fight. I don't think things are going to get kinetic. That doesn't suit anybody at all. No one would benefit from that.
Sure.
But it is going to be a bit of a little bit of a tussle, a little bit of a match that sees us maybe throwing our weight around a little bit. And it's not going to be comfortable, and there will be those that scaremonger, there will be those that apologise, and there will be those that
there'll always be those
that don't want to be involved, or
Sure.
they think, what's it our business? Well, you're seeing it now, the cost of living crisis. Now, with that cost of living crisis, that's a result of conflicts obviously in a major war in Europe and a conflict in the Middle East. Now, if you were to add into that a belligerent China, if they were to become such a thing, well, the world's trade floats on seawater. So I'm coming at this from a maritime perspective.
Sure.
But that's the main role of the Navy, is to maintain freedom of navigation.
Yeah.
And that includes, or mostly, trade.
Sure.
So it's something ridiculous, like 70 to 80% of global trade is on the water.
Yeah.
And those choke points include the Suez Canal and the Red Sea, which is what we're seeing now.
Yeah.
And if you go out east, you're looking at like the Straits of Malacca, out towards Singapore way. Now, if you had a country that was intent on trying to have a monopoly on the trade routes, now you're starting to get an issue. So if you think cost of living is high now, if they were to play a silly game, everybody would have to end up winning a silly prize. So it's important to maintain a level of deterrence, a level of readiness, and show a willing to exercise that if needs be.
Sorry, carry on.
No, go on.
Just to say to those who perhaps decry the existence of the military or the police force entirely, and say, why can't we just have world peace, everyone put down their guns, armistice?
Wouldn't that be lovely? Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, what's your counter-argument to those who decry the need for military at all?
Okay, appeasement only makes the aggressor more aggressive. And we've already established deterrence, carrying a big stick, and being able to talk softly. If you want to have the freedoms you have,
got to fight for them.
You do.
Or
and you have to at least, one, you have to have the will and the ability, and you do need to have the will.
Sure.
Now, to people that would detract from having a military like ours, which is still a global force, okay, nowhere near on the scale it's been in the past, but very much global, very capable, and revered, it's respected. If you have people that say, why are we getting involved? Why are we there? You're eroding the nation's ability to demonstrate will. And that willingness in itself can be a significant deterrent to a potential adversary. You can read many accounts of times where we've had what's called a demonstration or show of force, and it's been, let's just get some fast movers over the country, let's just sail a warship along a coastline, we're here, we can reach out and touch you.
But part of it, surely the crux of it in a way is based on eternal laws of nature almost, like there will always be bad guys.
There are, unfortunately.
Therefore, let's be the good guys.
Yeah.
Let's protect our own.
Yeah.
As in, there is an ancient, eternal,
The
timeless
barbarians
need.
are at the gates.
Exactly.
You can argue that.
If there are always barbarians, they'll always need to be protectors in response.
Yeah, you don't get to have social experiments or be as liberal as you'd like to be if you don't have the means to safeguard that or protect it. I mean, I hate the term, but if you were to think of the country as a safe space, well, what's keeping it safe?
Yeah.
Do you want your safe space?
Yeah.
It's your term. If you want your safe space,
Yeah.
there's got to be a border.
How do you protect
There's
it?
got to be a barrier,
Yeah.
and there's got to be rules in that safe space.
Yeah.
No, what do we want in here?
Yeah.
How do we want to police what comes in here and what doesn't, and how do we protect it from those that would see us not have it? And I'm all for freedom of speech, freedom from persecution, be it religious, sexual. Those freedoms should be allowed to exist, but you need to be able to protect those values and that way of life. And unfortunately, you don't get that when there are other nation states, bad actors, peer state adversaries,
Who are
ideologically people that are ideologically opposed, not just different, but opposed to our way of life.
Yeah.
You kind of have to safeguard that until we're all one big happy family as a species. We're not going to have that. It'd be nice to think we'll get there one day, but if we're going to get there, we kind of have to survive to get there.
Yeah.
And,
In the meantime,
we're still.
let's stay alive.
I think we're still cavemen with sticks and stones,
A tribal.
fighting over the guy that's on the other side of the hill
Sure.
in a different cave.
Sure.
We're not all quite there yet.
Yeah.
I think, as an optimist, I think we'll get there one day.
Hopefully.
Maybe.
I mean, my parents
As a
are
side note.
Buddhist, so they believe in world peace and working towards that kind of thing. And I fully understand where they're coming from, but I think it also comes back to the idea of the sovereignty of the individual
Yeah.
in relation to the sovereignty of the state. To protect yourself, the sovereignty of your own individual person, you have to be able to fight back if needs be from physical attack, from
There's a good
mental
saying
attack,
for that.
emotional
Sorry
attack.
to interrupt you, but there's a great saying before I forget it. There's one we had. It's called "The enemy gets a vote." Now, what does that mean? Let's put it into a day-to-day context here. Let's say it's Friday night and you want to walk from here into town. You're going to go and have a drink on the Barbican. You've got the best of intentions. You're not looking for any trouble. You don't want to cause anybody harm or any grief. You're out with a smile on your face. You've got no intention of having any trouble tonight. However, there are extrinsic factors that we call other people.
Sure.
Or bad actors.
Yeah.
Or someone having a bad day. There are things that can happen that will change that.
Yeah.
Almost a 180. You've got to vote in what you want to do, how you want to conduct yourself.
Yeah.
Well, the enemy gets a vote.
Yeah.
And it can very, very quickly change your night.
Yeah.
And the world is very much like that.
Yeah.
We can have the best of intentions, and I believe that most of the time we do. We don't always get it right. We stumble, we fall, we make mistakes. But I think we learn from them. And going out to the big bad world, which we are part of, we need to be prepared to defend ourselves if needs be.
Yeah.
Show a willingness to defend ourselves, and be clear on what our values are.
I wondered as well, can you tell me some fun military slang you learned in your time?
Well, where do we start with that one? I could buy you a book. It's called Jack Speak. Now, Jack Speak is just Navy slang, so I couldn't give you a lot of slang from other branches, but the Navy, we do have our own language. So, for example, you may have noticed I'm wearing a hat. It's not a hat, it's a lid.
Nice.
Okay.
I like that. Yeah.
It's silly. Scran, You heard that term?
Heard scran, yeah.
That's food. Okay, but that's a Navy term. Sun's out. Red is. It's hot. You got a kitchen there, cutlery.
Yeah.
Knife and fork. So we've already established what food is.
Mm-hmm.
Scran spanners. It's not a difficult language to understand. If you've never been on a warship or submarine or any Navy establishment and you hear these terms, it's very easy to pick up what someone's telling you. It's not rubbish, it's gash. It's not sweets, it's nutty. It's not fizzy drinks, it's goffer. I'm drinking a cup of tea, that's a wet. But it's a cup of tea, so it's a hot wet. If you're drinking water, it's a cold wet. It's not difficult. The C's, the ogging. But you might hear that referred to as OG1 November. Okay. So there's a level of slang and there's a level of slang behind that. The same as there is with Cockney rhyming slang.
Yeah.
The Navy has its own.
Sure. So Adam, what do you think makes a modern man?
This is a good question, isn't it?
Big subject.
Big subject. Lots to unpack.
What traits should he have, say?
Okay, right. First of all, you'd have to look at what the modern world is. I think that's pretty well established at this point. It's a crazy world. There's a lot of change. I think some classic, almost conservative, fundamental ideas are still important. You've got to be maybe, to summarise, and then I'll expand on it. Conservative in the week and a liberal at the weekends, perhaps.
Yeah.
You need to have. I mean, you don't need to have, but this, talking from my own personal experience, I think it's important to have those solid conservative family values, a good work ethic, so generating that stability, so that you can. So that's the work hard element, and then the play hard element is you need to be of a mindset that's quite agile, quite flexible. There's a lot going on in the world that we're all struggling to catch up with, particularly in the internet age. We've all learned
bit of a wild west.
Absolutely, yeah. You could call it the digital wild west, couldn't you? You wouldn't be wrong in. You certainly make an argument for it. You really, in the modern age, really need to know where it is you want to be in the here and now, as much as it is where you want to be going forward. So again, a bit of a cliche, kind of that living in the moment, but planning ahead. Absolutely, that's always been true. It's as true now as it ever was. But things in the digital age, this digital wild west, are very compressed as well. Everything's been compressed today, isn't it?
And accelerated.
It's accelerated, yeah, and perhaps it has, because we're so exposed now to everybody else's business. I grew up, as you did, where we had private lives. Yeah. I think we still do, but they're not as...
you have to pick and choose what you share, I suppose.
Yeah, and people do. That's your brand. That's how you brand yourself.
Sure.
That's weird air quotes, but yeah. Things have become more available to us. You're seeing how other people are living. You are exposed to more opinions, perhaps. Again, going back to my time in the Navy, my exposure socially, really, the internet was quite new. The conversations, such as the one we're having now, they were done at the pub, in the bar, and they were almost like their own little echo chambers, because where you would drink would often be very similar opinions to yourself, and every now and again you would be fortunate enough to have your ideas challenged.
Sure.
I think that's important, to have your ideas challenged, as much as it is to have your own perspectives put across in a way that isn't there to belittle someone, but perhaps spark not intrigue, what's the phrase I'm looking for here? Just sort of, just sort of like, okay, just that moment of pause and think, oh, do you know what, I never thought of it like that, or I haven't actually been to that part of the world, or I haven't seen that, or I haven't met people like this, that, or the other. And you didn't really compare yourself to anybody else. And you never felt the need to. I certainly never felt compelled to. But it was always good to like be in an environment where you were happy for other people's success, because you knew these people.
Sure. And
they knew you. And it was a mutual thing. Now all of a sudden, around the same time, well, now the internet's really kicking off, in particular social media. Your exposure to that now changes your perceptions of not just the world, but yourself. So, both outwardly and introspectively. and that you've had to develop a whole new set of skills. So I think this is where your point, or to your point, the modern man, that's someone who has to now operate as they did before, but with this whole new dimension, like the full spectrum that we had 20 years ago. That spectrum's only got wider. But to be a modern man, you've got to learn how to keep your ego in check more now than you did before. It's very easy to fall into being a narcissist. But you also now need to be checking how you come across online, which sounds very strange. You have to manage how other people perceive you. So so for example, one thing we'll talk about as being a father. So I think that's important to get that across as a modern man. So not everybody wants to do that.
Sure.
Not everybody will. Not everybody wants to. That's absolutely fine. But I think it's important to see how a dad, a father should be, and put that across. So I'm not just a dad. I need to be a dad in the digital space as well. All tools can build or damage. So it's figuring out how to use this new tool bag. Our tool bag, the tool bags of our fathers were, hammers and screwdrivers, and we still have the hammers and screwdrivers, but we also need to know how to brand ourselves as well.
Sure.
And that's a whole different skill set. It's a whole different tool bag.
Before and after children, what do you say is the single thing that's changed most about your personality since that time?
Oh, that's a good one. I've had to learn how to perhaps make myself child friendly. Now that sounds very strange, but
Sand down the rough edges?
yeah, kind of. I've come from that military background where it doesn't just have its own language in terms of Jack speak. Every other word is a profanity. I don't know how I've managed to go this long without using my first language, but
Sure.
English is my second language.
Right.
Profanity is my first.
Yeah.
And it's learning that I'm not talking to late teens, the guys I had to take with me, they were 18 into their early 20s. But they're people that had been conditioned and had gone through the system, and when by the time they arrive to you, they're already moulded. But
Yeah.
I've got to do that moulding process. So it's like, okay, right, so I'm going to have to be an instructor. Okay. How do you instruct this thing that doesn't even move? It just sleeps and poops and makes some noises and doesn't let you sleep. I've got to take it from that and turn it into this little thing that becomes a future person, future adult.
Yeah.
So you've got to learn how to make yourself, to use that term, child friendly. How can I take the things I've learned in coming from an instructor's point of view, how do I apply that to being a father, raising a child? So it's learning how to condense that and then present it in a way that a child can learn and get them to understand not just what you're telling them, but why.
Sure.
Question it. And I'm not going to say because I said so.
Yeah.
And I don't want you to go, but why? There's learning how to communicate with these little people. So that's the biggest skill. It's not just learning to communicate, it's how. It's having to learn almost another language.
Sure. A third language.
Jack
speak English, third language.
There we go. Yeah, so it's a strange one. What's changed the most? Maybe having to calm down.
Sure.
And
I guess that's part of it, the child-friendly thing.
yeah, where that really becomes relevant isn't calming down in front of the kids. I can be grumpy dad a lot, but there's no... and if I'm a little bit... If I need to use the term, if I need to take my head for a shit, if I don't spot it, my wife does, and I've got the gym.
Sure.
I've got the weights. But where it's really important to be calm and be collected and be sensible is outside, i.e. when your chance comes to outpin. So you go on a night out, you have to be extra careful now to avoid any kind of trouble.
Yeah.
Because as I said, the enemy gets a vote.
Yeah.
I can't be bothered with it. And it's so easy to think, well, I'm not just going to get myself in trouble here if I have to intervene or interject in something that's transpiring before
Yeah.
my eyes. So I need to think, well, this just doesn't impact me anymore.
Yeah.
How does this impact my family?
Yeah.
So having to calm down in that respect, and whether that's outright remove myself from that equation, or just don't go at all.
Yeah.
Think about where you go and what you're doing.
Sure.
So one of the biggest impacts fatherhood has had on me is my social life. Now I'm fortunate, I actually like my wife, so I don't feel trapped, and I spend a lot of time beautifying my garden. So I've got this nice little nest that I can enjoy. So that doesn't bother me. But not being able to spend as much time with friends, like for example, I see my friends every year. The last Saturday before Christmas, we have a big all-day drinking session.
Nice.
Done it for, I don't know, probably about 20 years now. It's a great day, but it's becoming increasingly normal that I don't see any of those people now
Until that
time.
Yeah.
Whereas 10 years ago, I'd see them almost every night.
Right.
So there's that huge change.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they've all grown up. I think I've grown up. So I look at that, and I have done since the kids come along. It's like, do you know what? I went out last night for a curry, and I enjoyed that with friends. But did I need to go to the pub afterwards and spend £100? Because that could have bought. I could have spent that on something for the kids, or a day out, or a trip to the cinema.
Yeah.
So you look at the way that you operate financially, completely different as well.
So more about the macro again.
Yeah.
Rather than just the micro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're having to learn how to be not just
A strategist almost.
Yeah, there is a financial strategy to having kids, and you have to put them first every time. There's no two ways about it. Like they come first. You'll be all right, but if you do anything that's detrimental to them, these little things in the way, they could die.
Yeah.
You know, they are absolutely 100% dependent on you.
Sure.
So no matter how moody you are, how much you're going to have a sulk, or how annoyed you don't get to go and see your friends, you've got to get over that quick.
Yeah.
You've got to get over yourself quick, and you've got to put your ego to one side.
Yeah.
And just put yourself on the shelf for a minute, because the kids, they come first.
Sure.
So you've got to learn, you know, you're not the most important piece on the board anymore.
Well, you're not a lone warrior. You're a patriarch, aren't you?
Yeah.
It's a different role.
Yeah. And although there's that joke, you know, follow me, I'm right behind you. That is what a patriarch is. You know, a leader can't be someone who leads from the front, but if you've got a pack, you need the pack out in front. They've got to be ahead of you, because you need to see what's going on. You need to keep an eye on every single one of them.
Yeah.
So you put yourself not at the back of the pack, you put yourself at the back of the queue.
Yeah.
Your wants and needs come secondary, tertiary, or to theirs. I wouldn't say it's the hardest job I've ever had, but it's the most intense job I've ever had.
Constant?
Because it's constant, yeah. There is no let up. There is no walking away. Okay, I've managed to step away for a few hours today.
Yeah.
But that's because they're at school. So that's my time to go to the gym, get shopping done, and then when I get back, it's like, right, this cap goes off, dad cap goes back on.
Yeah.
And it's all about time.
The dad lid. Well, what I wanted to ask you about as well is, what makes your wife a special woman?
That's a good question, and I'm going to have to proceed very carefully, aren't I? No, I would struggle to sum it up in an elevator speech. But to me, she's the most amazing mother. You know, when I met my wife, I mean, it's quite funny, and this will segue into something else in a minute. I was going through a bit of a rough patch, and all I did was work, train, and drink, really. And I was out on one particular night, and I don't suffer fools, and I made the foolish mistake of thinking my wife was one. And my party trick when I'm hanging one on is, when the shot girl comes around, I don't buy the shots, I buy the tray, because I'm an idiot, and I will finish that tray. And this one particular night, it was one of the rock clubs in Plymouth, and having a few drinks in there, blowing off some steam, and I'd obviously just bought this tray, and a friend of mine was sort of like, he was with me, so the tray was between me and him. It was about 60 quid's worth of basically yellow and purple sugar with alcohol in.
Yeah.
Horrible things, but it's the principle of it. So, I bought this tray, my tray. And if friends wanted them, they can help themselves, because they said, I'm not going to drink 60 shots, I'm going to die. That's why I bought them to share for a start. So I'm down to 30 already. I'll be all right. And my wife was with, I didn't know her yet, she wasn't my wife yet. She was with another friend. So it's one of them people who know people who know people. And I can't remember what exactly I said verbatim, but it was words to the effect of, like, she'd come over and my friend was handing out shots to people you know. And I was like, it was something like, oh, don't waste your time with them, Dan. don't bother handing them shots. You're not going to get anywhere. It was something like that. And she went off with an impression of me being quite...
brusque?
I don't know what term to use. Not approachable, prickly, sure. And that would probably be polite euphemisms for how I was at that particular moment in time.
Sure. And
the next time we crossed paths, I didn't know it was her, but she knew it was me. It was peripherals. She was only in my peripherals, but she remembered me, and she made me suffer. But at the same time, there's this hot little rock chick, the types that wear corsets and fishnets and hair's all done. As rock and roll and punk as you can get. And when the time came, not long after, funnily enough, I think after a year of being together, that was it. Like, number one was already on the way. She'd gone from being this very punky sort of gal to being this mumsy gal. And she stepped up right when she needed to. She just flipped on a dime. She went from being one of these people that would work nights. She was a night owl, and next minute she's doing night feeds and getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning for the kids. Like, completely did not a 180 because she was a terrible person. She did a 180 in that she went from just having to be responsible for herself to being responsible for whether this little thing, that whatever they're called, children, it would live or die. And it was just this, to see the instinct kick in.
So she has character.
But she had a lot of character before, big personality. Like, she could handle herself. But to see that level of ability or effort translate across to being a mother is impressive. Really impressive to see. And for our first child, it was a difficult birth in where we could have lost both of them. And I've seen people fight. I mean, really fight. But to be in a room with her where it was a case of, well, we can lose one of them or both of them. All of that was on the table. I mean, when she said, whatever happens, save the baby, like, that gets you.
Yeah.
As a grown man, it's like,
that's big shit.
I've seen bravery, I've seen stupidity, and they're usually one and the same. But it's very rare that you see bravery and selflessness. But it to be premeditated, or it's a conscious decision.
Yeah.
I've seen it instinctively. Like, I'm going to do this.
Yeah, it's powerful.
It can be inspiring. It's like there's a bit of stupidity there, but to see it with its just absolute selflessness. Just you hear people talk, but to hear someone say, "I don't care what happens to me."
Yeah. They made that decision.
If one of us has to go, I'm the one that's going today. I'm the one that's punching out. I'm clocking out today.
Yeah.
Baby's coming.
Wow.
So to see that, it's like I'd been in love with her for a long time anyway. Weirdly enough, we had kids and got married and all the rest of it. But when you see that, so there's no doubt, absolutely no doubt at all. Like this, you hear people say, "Oh, mama bears," and they're fierce. Like, no, she is. She's the real deal.
Real matriarch.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. Talking of connections, deep connections. What does brotherhood mean to you in any context? Could be friends, colleagues, family.
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll get the difficult one out of the way, and we'll segue into why. So the segue being when I first met my wife.
Yeah.
Now, you know that I had lost my brother in a car accident. It must have only been 3 or 4 months before. And, you know, he was a good friend of yours too. So,
Yeah.
you know,
He's a good guy.
I do feel for his loss quite deeply. And I think what hits me as well is how I see that with the likes of yourself and his really close friends and literally anybody he met. Like he was we all say he was the black sheep of the family, and I'm the real black sheep. I was the wolf in sheep's clothing. It just took a while to.
Sometimes it does.
You know, but he was very cheeky, very larger than life, and to lose him it's one of those things where I can use it to define what brotherhood means to me. That being, he wasn't a saint, and I never thought that of him. I'm not a saint, and he knew that. He's one of the only ones that knew I was the black sheep. We would fight each other to the death, and I think that sums up what brotherhood is there's no holding back. You know your limits, you know their limits. Whenever I've got into trouble, the old fisticuffs kind of trouble, there is an element where I demonstrate restraint and hold back. But with Andrew, it's to the death. Like there have been weapons involved, and how we never actually killed each other, I will never know. And you see that as a child as well. I would never have dreamt of putting a stick in someone's spokes while they're driving a bike. Yeah, I've done it to him. Like he's riding along on his bike, and I have a bamboo stick, and he's done it to me. And my nose is crooked on one side, and to this day, he's the only person that's ever broke my nose. I've been hit lots of times, and people have hit me hard, and I think they've sort of meant it. But there is a difference between hitting someone hard and meaning it, and actually wanting to kill someone.
Yeah, brothers do
and he's done that, and he's really sister's wedding, weirdly enough, as well.
Yeah, nice.
Real good hit. Busted my nose, and to the amusement of our audience, 10 minutes later, I've got a beer for him, and we're sat down and just sort of having a laugh about it. Meanwhile, the audience is like, "What's just happened? Like you just tried to kill each other. Now you sat down having a drink like nothing's happened." It's like, well, it has happened. That's why we're having a drink. We've got it out of the way. So to me, that's what brotherhood is. It's you don't hold back. We're all driven. We're humans. We're driven by emotion, and when your bond with someone is that close, those emotions are only amplified.
Yeah,
that's what that is. That's what passion is. When people are passionate. Just been to one of the most dangerous places on the planet at the time. Did a very dangerous job, and yet I come home and get humbled by a punch from my brother and an earful from your mum. That humbles you. That brings you right back down.
Yeah.
That's where you're like, okay, ego is a waste of time. No point having one. Don't take yourself too seriously. And it takes that level of closeness to someone to keep yourself in check. So brotherhood for me, it's something that's very near and dear and will always ring true. And ever since losing him, and there's been the odd occasion where I then, after losing him, I was mean to my wife, but I got into quite nasty fights after losing him because I needed someone to vent at.
Sure.
Not the best thing to do. I didn't go out looking for trouble, but if trouble was coming, I'd already made my mind up.
Yeah.
They were downrange. They're going to be my punching bag for the night. And it did happen a couple of times, and I got lucky. I didn't get in a lot of trouble. But I'd sort of gone into it where, because he's not here, I've got to represent him now as well. So it was almost as if when I did get into those two particular altercations, I was fighting. It's going to sound lame, but with the strength of two people.
I understand.
It's him and me.
I do understand.
And I've been in that scenario where we weren't fighting each other. We've got into fights with other people.
Yeah.
And it's not just fighting back to back when you're fighting with your brother. It's almost like you're fighting like what's the film called with the robots and they have that Oh, but no, Pacific Rim, right? You know,
yeah.
they get these Jaeger pilots and they drift. Is that the phrase? I don't know,
cool.
but they basically they know what each other's thinking. And they fight at that level. It's like that, but now since losing him, and it's not just if things are bad, but I feel like that's there. That's why I have a tattoo that he was going to have done on my arm.
Sure.
If I'm hanging out my ass, whether that's in the gym or at work or having a bad day as a dad, and I just like, I can't parent today. That kick up the ass is there, and I feel like he's there in me. That spirit that's there, however you want to define it. It's like, okay, so it goes deeper than this, then, doesn't it? It's not just about fist bumps and high fives. It's something a lot deeper to me. Brotherhood is one of those things that shouldn't be misused as a term, really.
You mean shouldn't be thrown around casually?
No, it shouldn't. I think words do have power.
Yeah.
And I think you can wear words out. Brotherhood it's a very deep bond, and that's one that I feel I'd experienced having very, very close friends in the service, and unfortunately, again, one of those, in fact two now, I had lost. And it sounds horrible to say, but that did prepare me for having to carry the weight of Andrew's coffin. And going back to what we said earlier about coming from a service family, when I got the call, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to sound like a right thug in a minute. It's 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning. I get the phone call. My dad's like, "Oh, Adam, you need to get around here now. You need to get around here quick." And I was like, "Oh, what's wrong?" I said, "All right, just come here quick." And I'm like, I can't remember whether the police were mentioned or not, but I'm thinking they're there. At the time, I'm living with a friend, and literally the night before, I'd thrown two lads out of a pub. They weren't demonstrating the right level of etiquette to be in the bar. Let's just leave it at that. And one of them did make a comment, reference that, well, I could deal with them both at the same time, and unfortunately that's what ended up happening, and I thought I was in trouble for that. So I get there, pull up outside mum and dad's house, and I'm like, oh god, there's a police car there. Okay, yeah, I've got some explaining to do. And now, as soon as I walked in the room, that's it. Before I could say anything, before I could even comprehend that this police officer was in my parents' living room, sidearm as well. That's the first thing I know. I walk into my parents' living room, and I spot the gun. Like, okay, that's not something that's normally in my my parents' living room. And before I've even comprehended that, Dad's, it's gone. I said, Andrew's gone. There was no break you into it. There was no delay. That he knew he had to shock me into, right, this is what you're used to. It's happened. Now you need to deal with it.
Yeah. And
that might seem cold to some people. That might seem...
I understand.
But my dad knew what to say.
Yeah.
And it's one of those moments where I wish it wasn't the case that it had to be like that, but he demonstrated there and then that he understood me and I understood him because of the way he delivered that line.
Mm-hmm.
And that instant shock is like, okay, right, there's the truth bomb.
Mm.
Now you can immediately start dealing with the process of understanding the who, what, when, where, why.
Yeah.
Now we've got the what out of the way, and I could have dealt with that there and then if it weren't for the fact that my mother didn't respond well to that comment, and that is a sound I will never ever forget. It's like it was like hearing her guts being ripped out. Yeah. That was hard. That was really, really hard. Like, your parents are superheroes, and it was like watching a superhero just crumble. Horrible, really horrible.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. There's no good way through the situation, is there?
No.
I understand why your dad said that, but also obviously I understand your mum's distress and.
So it's one of those where I think, had I not experienced loss in the service, it certainly gave me a set of tools, a mental set of tools to at least cope,
sure,
or react instantly, in a manner that enabled me to then do the process inside and stand up and begin to figure out, okay, right, I'm not dealing with this grief yet because I haven't got time to. I need to be there for my mum, my dad, my sister. So I kept myself busy at work, busy with the gym, and just focused on making sure everybody else was all right. Because I owed it to Andrew to, step up. It's putting that mantra that we spoke about earlier into practice, not having a lighter load, but having bigger shoulders. It's like my shoulders had to grow by 10 feet wide that day, either side. Like, that's, okay, it's time to put it to the test.
Sure.
Can you do it? And other people are going to be suffering too.
Yeah.
And he's one of those people where he would have tried to help other people before helping himself. So, well, I now owe. You owe it to the I don't want to say the dead, but to people you've lost. The living owe it to the dead to live.
Yeah, I understand.
So. But I've never, since it's happened, I've never felt distant from him. I've felt close the whole time. So again, that whole theme of brotherhood transcends. It really, really does, and I think it's important to talk about.
Yeah,
I think I've struggled with, especially the last couple of years, when I outpin, I let it get out of my system. So right. I will be reminded of friends that I've lost, the two that I've mentioned, and Andrew. I just do a little bit of soul searching to think, am I worthy of still being here while they're not? That's what brotherhood is. It's being not just true to yourself, but holding yourself accountable, maybe to the standards of others, i.e. those people that you can call a brother or brothers. If you want to kind of run with the pack, there are standards that need to be met. Do you meet those standards? Are you performing as you should be? You need to keep yourself in check. Yeah, and that's your job too as a brother. I think is to be that ego check, to be that almost a human embodiment of a reality check. It's very important. I feel it is anyway. So yeah, it's a big question for me, and I'm not uncomfortable answering it. I would be a bit unsure how I would be with the camera there. So I think you asked it very well and approached that really well.
Well, thanks.
I could see that it upset you as
difficult.
well.
It was difficult shit. And well, shit happens. It's happened to me. It's happened to you. Well, I thought we could end on a more light-hearted note.
Absolutely, that'd be good. Yeah, we went a bit dark there, didn't we?
I could ask you if you could go paintballing with 3 action stars from all time, who would they be?
3 action stars. Well, the obvious one is John Wick.
Right.
Because, but I guess does it have to be the character or the actor?
I was thinking the actors.
Whereas if it's character, then that changes things. But if it's actors, Keanu Reeves is going to have to be in there.
Right, yeah.
I've seen him on the range. The guy knows what he's doing.
And also unarmed, he's decent as well. If it comes to it.
He is. So I'm going to put him at number 1.
All right, Reeves.
You like that? Right. He's quite a level-headed guy.
Yeah.
He's someone I could count on him as like a 2IC. I'm going to need some muscle, and I'm going to need a wild card. I've got the level-headed all-rounder. So who can I use for muscle? You're going to get lots of good answers, so I'm going to go with Mr. T.
All right.
Just because he's an intimidating looking bloke.
He is.
All right, the wild card. Someone who would suit the wild card role. Let's say Mr. T is my muscle, right? He's the door kicker. He's the one that's going to kick that door down.
Sure.
But Mr. T, he's not going to be the guy breaching. He's not going to be the guy going in there fast. That's why you need your wild card.
Yeah.
It just goes. So I need someone who's a little bit unhinged.
Robin Williams.
Oh, see, he would be a good
Just
choice.
some manic nutcase just to charge in headlong.
Yeah, he would be good.
He's been in Vietnam as well.
He has.
Because you could have a crazy comedian. You got Jim Carrey.
Yeah, that's what I was. He was
Some
actually on my
manic
list. Jim Carrey was coming to the surface there. trying to think of a character actor, someone who would just go loopy, like almost like a Tasmanian devil.
Just a maniac.
See, the wild card is also your social hand grenade, which when you're having a beer afterwards,
You spice things up.
that's the guy that's morale. That's the guy that makes everybody laugh.
Yeah, sure.
Again, he's a social hand grenade as well as
An actual hand grenade.
Yeah, as well as an actual hand grenade.
Yeah.
And it should be someone that makes you think, oh, I can't watch.
Charlie Sheen.
Or see, there we go. Yeah, that's a good one.
Done hot shots, cocaine, maniac.
And he's good with a chicken.
Yeah.
I'm gonna swap him out.
All right. Great. Thanks, Adam. Good to talk to you.
No, it's been fantastic. I'm glad you've ended that on a high note. Hopefully, I didn't bring anybody down.
It's just real stuff,
difficult
man.
subjects there. Lots of big questions.
Yeah.
I think as long as I've got my point across, I hope that that's useful.
Yeah.
Insight to the subjects that have been broached even.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
It's been fun.
Wicked.
I've enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening. Please like and subscribe, rate, slate, comment, cavil, share, suppress, whatever you like. And stay tuned for more fantastic interviews with brilliant guests. Hasta luego.